Today on Judge Alex. He was helping out a friend in need.
He's a teacher, and it was in the summertime, and he was short on funds.
So what was the agreement?
He was going to pay me $150 on the loan, and he was going to pay me by February 5th of 2010.
But he says there's a reason he didn't pay.
How did he break the patio chair?
He got out of the pool. He had left some of his stuff there on the patio, and he'd get behind a chair. Everybody's there, and he's all taking off all his clothes. I think he was drunk, trying to put his underwear on.
Your Honor,
and
that's not true.
And boom, there goes the chair.
Today, Judge Alex breaks it down.
That has no bearing on this
Well,
case.
the only reason it might have some bearing on it is because I'm trying to understand why he hasn't paid you. You guys have a good friendship. And now we're here much later sitting in court. So I'm wondering if that incident got him angry to where he didn't pay you.
As a cop, he stood up for the law. As a trial lawyer, he fought for the truth. And as a criminal court judge, he commanded authority. Now he returns to preside over America's courtroom. Judge Alex. Stanley Swenson is suing his former friend David Solis for $865 because he claims he lent him money for bills and he refuses to repay him. David Solis says he intended to repay Stanley until he destroyed some of his personal property.
All rise. This court is now in session. Honorable Judge Alex Ferrer presiding.
Thank you. Please be seated. Mr. Swenson.
Yes, sir.
You're suing your friend, Mr. Solis, because you say you loaned him money for bills and expenses and things like that, and then he refuses to repay you.
This is correct.
And Mr. Solis, you said that you had every intention of repaying him until he came over to your house and started destroying your property when he was over for a pool party.
Right.
Okay. What's going on here, sir?
Well, David and I befriended each other approximately 5 years ago. And 2 years
How'd you two meet?
We met through a mutual friend, and we became friends and started hanging out and just being friends and going to lunch and doing things like that. He had a pool, and I'd go to his house, barbecue, you know, so on. And 2 years after we had met, I lent him money. And he borrowed money. I paid him back. He paid me back.
How much money did he borrow?
The first time?
Yes.
$1,000.
$1,000, okay. And he paid that back?
He did.
And why did you loan him money?
He's a teacher, and it was in the summertime, and he was short on funds.
Oh, you get paid in the 9 month?
10 months.
So you get paid in 10 months, and then you've got a 2-month dry spell if you don't work summers.
Right.
Okay. So you loaned him $1,000 when he said he was tight on cash, and he paid that back, so he kind of built your trust up there.
Correct.
Right? Okay. So what happens next?
So it's approximately 2 more years later, he asked me for another loan. And I wasn't hesitant to lend him the money since he had already repaid me on the first loan.
Now, during these 2 years, how close is your friendship that he's coming to you for money?
I mean, it's close enough that I go to parties at his house, I go to his, I go swimming at his house, we barbecue.
Is there a reason you couldn't go to somebody else for money?
No, not any particular reason. I mean, I don't have a lot of close friends, and at that time I considered Stanley to be a close friend.
So he comes to you and asks for money for what purpose?
Again, it was summer. It was August. And he was financially strapped and asked me for the personal loan.
How much money was he looking for at this time?
$1,500.
$1,500? Mm-hmm. Okay. And did you loan him the money?
I did.
Okay. So what was the agreement at this time? Is that what the amount you're suing over now?
No, it's less. He paid me partial.
But that's the loan you're suing over?
Yes.
Okay. So what was the agreement?
The agreement was that he write up the promissory note and that he was going to pay me $150 on the loan, and he was going to pay me by February 5th of 2010.
Okay. There's a written agreement to this,
Yes.
or is it all verbal?
No.
Okay, let me see what you have.
David drew up the contract.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, I, David Solis, have received from Stanley Swenson the amount of $1,500 as a loan to be paid back with 10% interest on or before February 15, 2010. No payments of principal or interest due before then. The term of this loan are fixed and may not be changed by either party without our mutual written consent, right?
As far as I can remember, Your Honor, that's pretty accurate.
Okay. So now he's got $1,500 of your hard-earned money, right? And so what happens?
So in April, well, he didn't pay me back in February. He told me he was...
What happens between the time he borrows the money in August? What happens between August and February?
Well, he told me that he was going to pay me when he got his income tax check.
Oh, okay.
The check's in the mail.
Right.
It's still in the mail.
Probably about a good equivalent. So he tells you he's going to pay you in February when the income tax refund comes in.
Correct.
Okay. So between August and February, how does your relationship with Mr. Swenson go?
It was fine. It was fine. Stanley tends to kind of, how could I say, he makes everyone believe, including me, like money's no object for him. He travels a lot. He has 2 vehicles. One of them's a BMW convertible, and and he's always out to dinner, and he's always going to concerts, and he's going to all this. So it wasn't like I felt really bad that I didn't have the money to pay him back right then.
Okay.
And we were good enough friends that on a regular basis, I let him know what was going on in my life. But of course, I wasn't obligated to pay back until February.
Well, during this time, after he loans you the money, you're still hanging out, you're still doing stuff together?
Sure, yeah,
Okay.
we continue to be friends.
Okay, so February comes around, right? And what happens?
I didn't have the money. I simply didn't have the money. I had continued to help my son, and I was struggling financially.
What about the tax refund check?
I didn't get very much tax refund that year. I didn't do as well as I had anticipated. And so I explained it to Stanley. I told him flat out, I said, you know what, Stanley, I really don't have the money right now. And he loved coming to my house, and he made it sound like, oh, Dave, it's okay, don't worry about it. I know you're good for it. I remember he told me that. I know you're good for it.
Sure.
And
Yes.
How do you feel about that now?
I don't feel so good about that, obviously. I'm here.
Coming up, was it Stanley's own fault that David refused to pay the loan?
he was at my house drinking like usual, and he started with some friends of mine. And one of my friends was like, not really, I was embarrassed because he was all flirty, he started getting physical, he's all, hanging out.
And later, was Stanley up to no good again?
He'd get behind a chair, everybody's there, and he's all taking off all his clothes. I think he was drunk, trying to put his underwear on.
Your Honor,
and
that's not true.
And boom, there goes the chair.
Judge Alex is back with a case of Stanley Swenson, who's suing his former friend David Solis for $865 because he claims he loaned him money and never got the full amount back. But David says he had every intention of paying Stanley back until he broke some of his personal property.
So what was your contingency plan? I don't get as much money, something else happens, I need to spend the money somewhere. How are you going to pay him back? What was your plan?
Well, I did start to pay him back. I told him, Sandy, I can't give you the whole amount, but I could give you some money. And I did give him some money.
At what point do you give him some money back, and what was it that brought that about? Did you just voluntarily go over and give it to him, or did something happen?
No, we would talk, and he would say, how are you doing this month, whatever. I told him, you know what, I get paid on the 1st, because again, I only get paid 10 times a year. So it's not like, like I could say, I'll pay you next week. So I did give him some money, and then I also
How'd you get some money out of him? Because my experience with my litigants is they never pay.
The way I got money out of him is I was on disability because I had a surgery. And I pleaded with him at that time if he could pay me some money.
Come on.
So
I'm sorry, Your Honor, but
he came and he paid me $1,000 of the loan.
Oh, well, you're way ahead of my litigants here.
Right,
okay.
and
so now you've got 1,000 of your 1,500 back.
Right, so this
you're entitled to some interest according to your
restored
contract.
my faith in David. Do you understand?
Right.
Your Honor, can I say, ask Stanley, Mr. Swenson, who was there at his surgery, who picked him up in the morning, took him to his surgery, stayed with him through the surgery, the whole thing. I was the only one that was there. His other friends weren't there because we were friends. So just like he needed me, I felt like he was understanding because I needed him. But then he started just like sweating me for the money. And I understood that he was on disability and blah, blah. And I gave him what I could, which was $1,000.
Okay.
Okay?
So he makes a partial payment. When does he make that?
In April.
In April, okay.
When I had the surgery.
All right. So now what he owes you really is $500 and whatever the interest is going to be.
Correct.
Right? Okay. So what happens after that?
My vehicles, both of them, needed repair at the same time. So I was 1,800 in right there. And at the same time, my friend's getting married in Maui, so I'm trying to plan a trip to Maui. So I plead with David, please, can you pay me the money, because I could really use this $800, whether it's towards fixing my vehicles or towards my trip, whatever it is.
How'd you come up with $800?
Well, it wasn't 800. It was actually 690.
Okay, so how'd you come up with $800?
I don't know, because with what my claim is for 800 because of I hired a service to serve him and
For
file
court
my
costs
papers.
and all that. Okay.
Right.
All right. Well,
that's
first of
where
all,
the 800's coming in.
How'd you
He
come
owed
up with
me
690?
Because he paid me the $1,000.
Right. It was $1,500
So $650 is the balance.
plus 10% interest, which would be $150 for the year. That's $1,650.
And then I lent him $40 on top of that for gas to go visit his son.
You didn't lend me $40, Stanley. Your Honor, excuse me, can I say something? He did not lend me $40, okay? I needed to go see my son, and he had been at my house drinking like usual and having a really good time.
Does he have a drinking problem?
I think he has a drinking problem, but you know.
How does he behave when he gets drunk?
You know, he could be really abrasive and irritating. And then one of the things is he could be kind of vulgar. And in fact, he embarrassed me several times when my friends were over. He's like, I'm a sloppy drunk, you know, and then he acts all like crazy. And I do, you know, I used to always be, because he's my friend. So I'd be like, oh, you know, that's just how Stanley is. And I tell him, Stanley, why don't you lay down for a while? Why don't you go to sleep for a while?
I'm a jovial drinker, not a sloppy.
You're a happy drunk, not a sloppy drunk.
Oh my God.
He was
Stanley,
so depressed.
And the reason that I got
wasn't be able to
and
go
we
see
stopped
his son.
talking and I stopped communicating with him about the money was because exactly that. He was at my house drinking like usual, and he started with some friends of mine. And one of my friends was like, not really. I was embarrassed because he was all flirty. He started getting physical. He's all, you know, hanging out.
And what did your friend say?
My friend was like, man, what's wrong with your friend? You know, he's just touchy, you know.
Oh, he was flirting with one of your guy friends.
With one of my friends.
Okay, and your guy friend didn't take it well.
No, and I was embarrassed.
Coming up, should Stanley have kept his mouth shut?
Stanley's always bragging about his money. Oh, I went to Machu Picchu. You know, I went scuba diving in Tahiti.
That's not bragging about my
so
money.
that's fine.
Bragging
you know,
about
and that's
life.
great. And all my poor teacher friends were impressed with that.
Did that bother you because you were tight on cash? It's time for America to vote on today's case. Who do you think I should rule for, the plaintiff or the defendant?
Call toll-free 1-800-282-2333 to vote now and find out how the rest of America votes. You'll also receive some valuable offers. Call 1-800-282-2333 now. Judge Alex returns with a case of Stanley Swenson, who's suing his former friend David Solis for $865 because he claims he loaned him money and never got the full amount back. But David says he had every intention of paying Stanley back until he got drunk and broke some of his personal property.
You knew him for 4 years. So I'm sure that this incident where you say, if I'm getting you correctly, where you say he got drunk, he flirted with one of your friends, your friend, he was offended by it.
Yes, he was.
That couldn't have been an isolated incident. That must have happened other times. So you must have been used to it.
Well, I wasn't used to it being physical. I mean, he's flirty anyway.
Oh, okay,
Stanley has a way of being flirty with men, women, you know,
canines.
Small animals. No, I'm just kidding. No.
I knew you were going there.
No,
okay. So when you say that he flirted with your friend and the flirtation got physical.
Yeah, he got physical.
Well, what do you mean?
Well, he would try to touch him and stuff.
It was not a big deal. I was just, you know, grabbing his arm and his
grabbing his arm. Oh, brother.
David told me that his friend was offended months later. Regardless of that, it has no bearing on this case.
Well, the only reason it might have some bearing on it is because I'm trying to understand why he hasn't paid you. You guys have a good friendship. You loaned him money before, he paid you back. You loaned him money this time, he didn't have it, but when he got it, he paid you a good chunk of it. And now we're here much later sitting in court, so I'm wondering if that incident got him angry to where he didn't pay you.
No, I don't believe that.
I can tell you what happened.
Because we were still friends.
I can tell you exactly this is exactly what happened, Your Honor. One day he invited me to his house, and Stanley's always bragging about his money. Oh, I went to Machu Picchu, you know, I went scuba diving in Tahiti.
That's not bragging about my
so
money.
That's fine.
Bragging
you know,
about
and that's
life.
Great. And all my poor teacher friends were impressed with that.
Did that bother you because you were tight on cash?
Oh no. My life is very full, and I think that bothers him more than it bothers me.
Okay.
You know, he brags about all his trips.
So
and all
what happened? So what happened when he was bragging?
So what happened is I went to his house, and he's talking to his friends, and then somebody kept texting him and calling him, and then he starts telling his two friends and myself that he wants to go to this wedding. And then he goes, oh, and how am I going to go to the wedding? I don't have any money and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And apparently the wedding wasn't until January, and it was going to be in Hawaii, and his friend wanted him to go. And then he said, well, she's willing to give me the money to go, but I don't want to do that. And then that's the first time in a long time that he mentioned the money. And I said, Stanley, I'm really sorry. You know, right now I can't, but as soon as I can, I'll give you the money. And I told him, if you're not going to go to Hawaii until January, I certainly can pay you before that. Because this was a summer again, no summer school, but I start getting paid again October the 1st. I told him, I'll give you something. Well, that was it. He kept hounding me, and then, oh, I got to make my reservations and blah, blah. And you know what, Your Honor, even though I didn't pay him, he still went to Hawaii.
Coming up, did David lie about being broke?
We're having a barbecue, and he tells me that he's going to make dinner for one of his colleagues and his wife. And I said, so this little flag goes off in my head. Oh, he doesn't have any money, but yet he's going to entertain somebody.
It's time for America to vote on today's case. Who do you think I should rule for, the plaintiff or the defendant?
Call toll-free 1-800-282-2333 to vote now and find out how the rest of America votes. You'll also receive some valuable offers. Call 1-800-282-2333 now. Judge Alex is back with a case of Stanley Swenson, who's suing his former friend David Solis for $865 because he claims he loaned him money and never got it back. But David says he had every intention of paying Stanley back until he broke some of his personal property.
What was the straw that broke the camel's back that caused you to sue your friend?
He quit communicating with me. So I texted him and said, if you know, I'll give you to October 1st.
In your answer, the reason I asked that is in your answer you say, at some point I realized he obviously had more money than he was letting on.
Because we're having a barbecue, and he tells me that he's going to make dinner for one of his colleagues and his wife. And I said, so this little flag goes off in my head. Oh, he doesn't have any money, but yet he's going to entertain somebody.
Stanley, I do buy groceries. Okay. Hello. Mijito, I was going to make chile rellenos. You know how much those chiles cost? I get like 6 of them for like $1.50.
All that's going through my mind.
It wasn't like I was inviting him over for filet mignon
and he doesn't want to pay me.
Your Honor, that's all. So that's just.
All right.
Oh my God.
So the bottom line is, you're suing him for the $690, which includes $40 loan that you haven't documented. So let's say $650. What's the legal fees of $145?
The $145 was the filing charges that I hired somebody to file the paperwork for me.
So that includes a process server and a company that filed all the paperwork for you?
Right, and to serve David.
Got it. Okay. So, Mr. Solis, what is your defense?
I have a patio chair that he broke, but he, of course, Your Honor, he doesn't remember the patio chair.
How did he break the patio chair?
Stanley had a habit of doing this because that's the way that he is. He got out of the pool. He had left some of his stuff there on the patio, and he'd get behind a chair. Everybody's there, and he's all taking off all his clothes. And I'm like, Stanley, I have 2 bathrooms. I have a bedroom. Go change inside. I think he was drunk, trying to put his underwear on.
Your Honor, that's not true.
And boom, there goes the chair.
In front of
but of course, he thinks he didn't do it. And
Your
you know,
Honor,
when you're a lush,
true.
you do stuff you don't know.
He is a happy drunk, apparently.
Yeah, he is a happy drunk.
I wasn't blacked out.
He doesn't make me happy, but...
All right, as far as your damaged property is concerned, I've seen you have not submitted one shred of evidence of his property. You have any pictures? You have any receipts? You have anything like that?
I do not.
Okay, you're not going to get that. You know that, right? Okay. You have a friendship. I'm sorry it's come to this. $865 is the amount that it now totals as a result of your failure to have paid what you originally borrowed. I don't know what started it. I don't know if it was him coming on to your friend because you seem to have brought that up as something that, you know,
it was embarrassing. It's embarrassing.
Oh, yeah, but 4 years of him changing in front of your friends on the patio was embarrassing too,
it's
I'm
not
sure.
true,
Somehow you still paid it.
Right.
So the bottom line is, I don't know why it happened, but you owe him the money. It's a judgment for the plaintiff of $865. A pleasure meeting both of you.
Thank you.
All right.
Judge Alex has ruled in favor of the plaintiff and has ordered the defendant to pay him $865.
I feel that the judge's decision was fair and justice has prevailed.
I just think that if the judge would have had more time, I think if he would have given me more of an opportunity to talk about all the stuff that's going on, I don't think that he would have ruled in Stanley's favor. I think that he would have seen, but you know, like you said, I don't have evidence, I don't have pictures. So I guess looking at it that way, yeah, the judgment was fair.